And we are back. Family Check it is. And our topic of conversation, as I had mentioned earlier, is parenting in modern day and its challenges. And with me in studio right now is a therapist and life coach. Her name is Tracy Korugendo. Tracy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Vivian. Thank you for having me.
We're pleased to have you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
All right.
Yeah.
So we are looking at parenting in modern day and maybe the challenges that come with it. When we talk about parenting, what are we looking at?
So parenting is nurturing, caring, and guiding children from infancy to adulthood. It involves physical care, education, setting boundaries, and emotional support for the children. Every decision that is made, from what the child wears, what the child eats, impacts who they become as an adult. So in a nutshell, that's basically what parenting is. Yeah.
So it's bringing up a child from infancy
to adulthood. Yeah.
And taking care of everything in between. That's what we call parenting.
Yes.
I mean, we all know what parenting is, but just for the purpose of defining it.
Yeah.
And then when you talk about parenting, there are different types of parenting, or should I call them different styles of parenting?
Yeah.
If you may take us through some of these styles. There are 4 styles.
Yeah, there are 5 styles of parenting. And just before I dig in, there are 2 principles that create the types of parenting. One being structure and then warmth. When I talk about structure, I mean we're talking about rules and boundaries that parents set for their children. This can be like meal time. What time do you have your meals? What time do you do your homework? And this helps children have a sense of direction and also learn discipline. And then the other principle that creates the types of parenting is warmth. When I talk about warmth, I mean affection, understanding, communication with your child. And these help children feel loved and valued and like they belong. So these two principles then create the different types of parenting. So I'll start with the first type of parenting, which is authoritative.
Yes.
So authoritative type of parenting is where there is a balance of warmth and structure. So the parents that use this type of parenting have a balance of both. They set rules but also are open to dialogue. For example, if a child makes a mistake in this type of parenting, you're not so quick to punish them. You sit down, understand where they're coming from or what happened, and either you teach them a lesson from it, and when they do it the second time, you can choose to punish. So this kind of parenting will breed adults that have confidence, that have very good social skills. And then the second type of parenting, we call it authoritarian. So authoritarian is where a parent is very high on structure and low on warmth. So this type of parenting is where you have to do things by the book, the strict kind of parenting. I remember back in the day, there were households where people say that when they had their parents come home, they run upstairs, they scatter. So they were so scared of that. We are talking about this kind of parenting where you're really scared of the parent because you have to do things by the book.
There's no room for dialogue.
No room for making mistakes.
Whatever the parent says goes.
Yes, no room for mistakes. And this type of parenting will breed children that grow into adults that have anxiety because you're always on the edge. They suppress emotions because they fear getting into trouble. So each type of parenting will affect the way the child turns out. And then the third type of parenting is permissive parenting. This is a type of parenting that is overindulgent, very high on warmth, and very low on structure. For lack of a better word, spoil the children. The child can do no wrong. There are no boundaries. The child calls the shots. Yeah. So this is the fourth type of parenting. And this type of parenting will breed an adult who has a hard time following rules. They get into trouble with the law. They're very self-centered because they're used to having their way. They struggle in relationships. It's my way or no other way. And such children become very chaotic. Yeah. And then the last type of parenting is the non-involved parenting, where there is no warmth, there is no structure, the parents are just absent. And this is the type of parenting that will breed adults with a lot of mental health issues, low self-esteem, because these are children who have no guidance at all, who have no love, who have nothing. And remember, parenting is the foundation of all of us all. We are products of how we were raised.
Sure.
Yeah, so those are the 5 types of parenting that we do have.
All right. So you've mentioned all these types, and from my own perspective, I feel like back in the days, the authoritarian was the way to go for parenting.
Yeah.
What about now in the modern day? Can parents really use this particular way of parenting, or which one is the best in this modern day and age?
From my own opinion is it's good to have a balance of both structure and warmth. So if you had to ask me, I think authoritative kind of parenting is the best kind of parenting you can give your child, because that means they have a balance of the warmth, and they also have a balance of the structure. So they get a taste of both. And that way they're able to be grounded and have a sense of direction. These are the permissive, we've talked about the outcome of such children. So if you're to choose one, let's say permissive, then your child misses out on having structure. So I believe we need to adapt the authoritative kind of parenting.
Yeah.
But also, again, it's good to be flexible in our way of parenting, because what might work for one child might not work for the other child. So it depends on the personality of the child and knowing who your child is and picking what works best for them.
And speaking about getting to know who your child is, for you to know which parenting style is proper for maybe each child, of course you'll need to be present in that child's life for you to be able to actually just know them well. But in the life we're living in right now, it's very fast-paced, you know. Parents are never really in the house because they're out looking for that bread, you know. So maybe how can someone, or can a parent be able to have that balance, work-life balance, whereby they're also still able to have time with their child?
Yes, well, work-life balance is a challenge for many parents nowadays, because our days, the mom stayed at home and took care of the children, and the dads went out working and provided for the family. But now we have things like 50-50 households where both parents are working. But it's very important to have a work-life balance when it comes to raising children. I tend to believe that not all parents will be busy at the same time. So whoever is available needs to create work. It can even be as simple as having dinner with the children. Because what's happening nowadays is we have engaged our children in all sorts of co-curricular activities. So when we do have free time, we are busy dropping them swimming, basketball from basketball, doing all this. We think we are giving them what they need. But what do you do with that little time that you have away from work? It can be simple things like having dinner with them, talking to them, finding out how they are, the intentional communication, where you're not trying to talk to them while on their phone, because you can pick quite a lot. And I talked about knowing your child. You can be able to tell if your child's body language is different and pick up something from just a small dinner of 30 to 45 minutes. I'm not asking parents to stay at home, but how do you utilize the time that you have with the children? Yeah. And
I know you've mentioned that, you know, we can't have this both parents being busy at the same time. But what of, you know, single parent households? You know, what to do now?
Yeah, that's yet another challenge. It's and it's a big problem here in Kenya. We have a lot of single parent households, and where you could have had 2 parents and one being maybe more available. Now this one parent has to go and make ends meet and take care of the child, which is very unfortunate. But in such cases, you can look at support systems, aunties, uncles who can be there to help you raise these children, because this is something beyond someone's control. But it's always good to have a village. It's very unfortunate that our times, child safety is also another concern. So you have to be concerned about who you're leaving your child with. We have also relatives taking an advantage of children. So it's a bit tricky, but as a parent, I believe you can always narrow down to people that you think and believe that you can trust your child with, and have them become your village in raising these children. Yeah, that's what I would say about single parenting. You
know, right now, kids have closed school, you know, they're at home and they'll be home for the longest time. They have full 2 months to just be at home.
Yeah.
Maybe what's the proper way of maybe engaging them in a way that will be effective, you know, for the children themselves, in order for them not to engage in, you know, it's very easy for them to now get into things that are dubious. How do you encourage or advise parents to go about this period when they have their children full-time in the house?
Okay. We talked about structure, and even in this long holiday, if the children do have structure, like let's say they have a whole day of being at home, there's time to read books, there's time to go play outside. I would, of course, there are co-curricular activities, there are holiday camps, but we want to think there's also an issue with finances. Not all parents can afford that.
True.
So what do you do when your children are just at home and you can't afford these things? Maybe create a structure at home where they are able to read, they're able to go play with the others, because social media is also an issue. You find that if you don't provide structure, you will have your child watching TV and stay on the tablet all day long. So there's creating structure, getting them engaged in doing things that they are passionate about, cooking classes, name it, all types of things that the child can, even doing house chores in the house, just creating that structure that can guide them on a daily basis to give them some sort of responsibility, and they are not that idle. And those that can afford, take them to do now these co-curricular activities, soccer, the swimming, and all these other activities. Yeah.
And you've also touched on screen time. You know, you find ways to engage them so that they just don't stay watching television or being on the screens the whole time. And right now, living in an era where social media is the it, and I'm talking about now teenagers growing up, you know, what is the best way for them to interact on social media safely? Because we know there are people who want to predate on them as well, you know. So how do we go about ensuring that their online interactions are safe? For a parent to ensure that is laid down, how do they go about it?
Okay, about the social media and predators, I think it's very important for parents to have conversations with their children on what is safe on social media and what is not, because we are in a technology era. It's inevitable for them to have the gadgets. They need to know how to use them. They need to know what's happening. But do we actually tell them what is safe? Because when they go out there and they see all this information, and they have no idea, they will believe what they've seen out there. It's very important for parents to have sex talks with their children. There are guides on that depending on what age, and also find out what your child knows, and then you pick it from there. It's also important to talk about drugs, because I understand kids go online and there are these challenges for taking drugs. Kids carry drugs to school because they've seen it on social media. So when you create that awareness with your child, and you open also a channel of communication, when they come across this information on social media, or when you keep tabs, there are also apps that parents can put on their children's gadgets to see what they are watching and what they are doing, so you can have conversations. But most of us, I think, when we find our kids watching things on social media that are not age appropriate, we are quick to punish and take the gadgets away, and we forget the most important thing, which is having a conversation on what your child has had access to, and finding out what they've picked from there or what they know, and being able to teach them from there, rather than being so quick to punish. And
still picking on that, you know, for millennials, you know, some of us millennials, our parents never really got to talk to us about this sensitive topics. I'll put them in quotes. You know, when you talk about sex, when you talk about specifically sex, maybe drugs they did, but when it comes to sex, really we were not taught about that. And I feel like in the modern day parenting right now, you cannot afford to not talk about it, because I mean, there's social media. If you don't talk about it, they'll find it somewhere. They'll bump into it somewhere. So probably that is also something that parents should really look into. And maybe speaking about that, when do you say should be the appropriate time for a parent to start introducing this kind of topic, specifically sex? When is the right time for a parent to start speaking about it? And how do they start? Where do they start?
Okay. About sex, unfortunately, nowadays our kids are exposed at quite a young age. All cartoons have boyfriends and girlfriends. It's everywhere. Interactions with their friends. Because I could protect my child all I want, but when they go to school, what is the other child talking to them about when it comes to sex? So I wouldn't say there's a right age, but there are some guides on how you can have the sex talk with your child at different ages. Even 4 to 5, as early as 4 to 5, the child knowing their private parts, who shouldn't touch, who should not do, because when you don't have these conversations, when something happens to your child and someone says, do not tell, they will not tell. But when you familiarize them with this topic, they'll be able to come out and say. So I would say that as early as you can, just make your child comfortable knowing that these are my private parts. And then as they get older, I say there are some guides that tell you what to talk to your child. And then there are kids that know more than their age, maybe from social media or from interaction with their friends. So you pick on what your child knows. When you have the conversation, pick from what your child knows, so that you also do not end up telling them what they already don't know, and then you can build from there on how to educate them sexually. And if you can't do it, because I believe some of us don't even know how to do it, it's always good sometimes you have a mentor who your child is free with. It can be an auntie, an uncle, someone your child is close to, and ask them to do it for you. Yeah, you just have to find a way. Yeah.
Now that you've brought up the issue of mentorship, you know, how important or how essential is a mentor to a young person right now?
It's very essential for children to have mentors, because these are people they look up to. These are people that they admire. These are people they really want to be like when they grow up. And these mentors tend to open a very safe channel of communication for your children. So we very well know that our children will not tell us everything. They'll hide quite a lot from us, either because they fear our reaction or they're just scared. But when a child does have a mentor, remember, it's a safe space where they can share things that they wouldn't share with you as a parent. Then they have a safe space to go and share things. So I believe it's very important for them to have someone, just that one person that they look up to, that will offer safe space and also guide your child. Because career-wise, in their interests, kids are bubbly. This is someone they'll go to and tell all the nonsense. But sometimes as parents, we are very tired from work. You come home, your child is telling you unrelated stories. You're just too tired to listen. But maybe a mentor is able to see it and pick things and follow up with your child and give them a sense of direction.
How can a parent go about picking a mentor for their child?
I believe children have people they tend to be close to, if you observe. And if your child is uncomfortable with someone, please don't push it. So pick on this child. Ask your child, would you like to talk to auntie or uncle? If you were to do something, who would you like to do it? And even having conversations with children. Children do not like confrontational kind of conversations. We could try speaking while doing an activity, maybe cooking, or if the child likes soccer and you can, or they like to play a game where you're just talking and you're not facing them, they feel like they're in trouble. So they tend not to open up. So talking to children while they're engaged and you're also engaged, they tend to open up more. So in choosing a mentor, just check with your child small questions like, would you like to go have coffee with auntie this? Or even you as a parent, we have instincts. You're able to tell if your child will be comfortable with someone or how close they are to this person. So those are some of the tips that can guide you in choosing a mentor.
All right. I want us to look at mental wellness. You know, right now when you go on social media, you'll find so many young people talking about being depressed, talking about not being at a good mental space. Probably how well should a parent navigate that in ensuring that their child has proper mental wellness? How should they go about that?
Social media has become a menace for the children, and mental illness has also become a very big thing. We have children committing suicide, and we have children getting depressed from what they watch on social media. There's a lot of peer pressure from social media, and like I said, I think it boils down to parents opening a safe communication channel for their children. Because when you talk about self-esteem, that children pick as from watching what is happening on social media, and then it affects their esteem. If you know your child, you're able to pick when they start acting different, or when they start withholding, or when they start not feeling comfortable to do things that they were not doing before. So it all boils down to communication. And the suicide rates, I had a parent friend who told me that there was a challenge in school where kids were cutting their wrist as a way to express, like if they felt any kind of pain, they had to cut their wrist. And it was just a challenge.
Wow.
That was started in a school.
Yeah.
So it becomes very difficult for a parent, because most times you're not aware that your child is doing this. But her child is the one who came and said, Mom, there's this, kids are doing this, and she had just done once. So it open channel of communication, allowing your child to express themselves. That way they'll feel safe coming to you, even when they're going through the worst. Even depression and drugs. It's very unfortunate that most times a parent will not even know when their child is using. By the time they realize, sometimes it's too late, they're addicts. But having this conversation, just like sex, what are drugs? What are they? What do they look like? What are the effects of using these drugs? The kids need to know. I believe a child who knows and has heard from their parent, when they are put in a place where there's all sorts of, they would make a better choice.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. So communication is actually just key in all of this.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like parents nowadays should be friends with their kids.
Yes.
Yes? Yeah, because that's the only way you can get into their minds as well, and know what are you thinking, what are you hearing from out there, what is happening around your peers.
And constantly checking in, because sometimes you think you've had that conversation and that's enough. You assume your child knows, but children forget, and they're all over the place. So constantly checking in. You've talked about drugs. Ask them, so what's happening? What's going on in school? Remember a conversation about drugs. What do you remember about it? What do you think about it? Have you seen it anywhere? Because what you would say today, maybe your child has not been exposed, and tomorrow they've seen someone using the drugs, and it's a whole new experience. So constantly checking in on these important conversations: sex, drugs, and alcohol. Yeah. All
right, now let's get into probably the challenges of modern day parenting, which we've actually touched on as we were continuing with the conversation. What are some of these challenges that you would love to point out?
So apart from we talked about single parenting, we talked about social media, and we also talked about mental health issues. There's also financial challenges for the parent, where the parents are struggling to make ends meet, especially in this day and era where there's so many demands. It feels like you have to be spending on each and everything. Poor households where the parents are struggling to even pay school fees for their children. That can be a challenge for the parents. I'll give a few tips on how to handle that. Another challenge that parents are facing is peer pressure. Parents do have peer pressure.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, you see someone else's children. Schools have trips nowadays. Some schools offer trips. Kids go to the US, and it's quite costly. So as parents, sometimes we put ourselves under pressure. You feel like your child also has to go. And there's also just peer pressure of someone's kids are studying maybe to become doctors. You start pushing your children to also pursue things that they are not even passionate about, because you want them to look like the other person's children. So there's also that peer pressure and competition amongst parents, which becomes a challenge because it puts pressure on both you and the child. And it makes you set unrealistic expectations.
It's interesting because most times when we talk about peer pressure, we don't look at it on the parent side. We look at peer pressure from the children's perspective, you know, and the peer pressure they get to encounter. So that's interesting.
And then there's safety concerns. It's really tough for parents nowadays because you constantly worry. We have nannies taking advantage of children. A lot of young boys are introduced to sex by their caregivers,
Yeah.
even girls. We have, sometimes you can't even trust your next door neighbor with your child. So, and even safety on and off, online and offline. So it becomes a very big challenge for parents because you're constantly worried about your child being safe. Even in school, you're worried about what friends or your child is interacting with, and yet you cannot be in control of everything. So that becomes a very big challenge for parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And from all those challenges that you've mentioned, maybe how or what are some of the tips to overcome each and every one of those challenges?
Okay. So for them, I'll start with a few tips like taking safety for the parents. You can't pour from an empty cup. So I believe that parents also do need to take care of themselves first so that they can be better parents to their children. Because of a lot of us, we talked about how we were raised with authoritarian kind of parenting. So when we don't work on ourselves and our mental well-being, we start bleeding on our children. We start projecting on our children. So parents do need to take care of their mental well-being, and then that way they can be better parents to their children. And then just staying informed, listening to podcasts, listening to the latest researches about parenting so that you can make a better informed decision and also know what is happening to the children, because the world keeps evolving and keeps changing. Some of us don't know what challenges our children are facing, but when you stay informed, you're able to even preempt your child and have the conversation, and they're surprised that you even know all this. We weren't raised in a world of TikTok. Our children have access to this. So it's always good to be informed and know what they're doing at a certain age. And then another tip that I would give for parents is to set realistic expectations. There is no such, if you strive for perfectionism, that is so much pressure on both you and your child. Understand your child's strengths and their weaknesses. Academically, know what your child is capable of. Some children are more intelligent than the others. Others are average students. Don't put so much pressure. We have a lot of children going to school just to please the parents or doing things that they don't actually love just to please the parents. So it's very important for the parent to set realistic expectations. And then just balancing screen time, having structures. It's time for the screen, 1 hour, 2 hours. When you're done with this, do some chores or do something. Just having structures in place and having boundaries that kids can follow. It's really important for parents to do that. Yeah.
And you had mentioned the challenge of peer pressure on the parent side. Maybe what are the tips for that, for overcoming that?
I think just knowing where you are as a parent, and it boils down to mental health, because what is driving you to make your children want to be like others? What is in you that wants to use your children to compete with others? So when you address the root cause and then you become confident in trying to achieve things at your own pace without having to fight or compare yourself to anyone, and then you stop putting that pressure on the children, because remember, it's coming from the parent onto the child. So who needs to address this issue? It's the parent. Yeah. And you stop, then when you address it, you stop bleeding on your child. Yeah.
What's the role of therapy in modern day parenting?
Well, we all need therapy. I keep saying, as a therapist, I believe we all need therapy because we are all struggling. I believe our parents, not to blame them, they raised us for a world that we were not prepared for. So when we come into this world, it has taken a flip. There is so much that we are dealing with that we are not mentally prepared. Well, no one teaches you how to parent, and you can't prepare your children, but we need to know that we are raising our children for the world and not for ourselves. So as parents, I think we need to be intentional. We need to be intentional. We need to educate ourselves. We need to stay informed. We need to teach ourselves, and we need to heal ourselves through therapy. Because like I said, if I was raised in an authoritarian parent household, that means I have some kind of trauma. And if I don't address that, I'm bleeding on my children or projecting on my children. If I was parentified as a child, I was made to take care of my young siblings, I could create the same expectation on my firstborn child. When she comes of that age, I start expecting her to be the one to take care of the others. So the thing that people call generational curse. Sometimes it's not it's a pattern that's repeating itself.
Cycles, yeah.
Yeah, so therapy is very important for parents, especially when you know that you're struggling. You do a self-evaluation and understand where your triggers are coming from. We have parents that just keep shouting. They're always cranky. So that goes to show that there's something that triggers you, or there's something within you that keeps popping up. So it's important to do therapy, especially when you know that you're not in a good place. Yeah.
So therapy, as you say, is for everyone.
For everyone. We all need therapy.
It's about time we accept
and life coaching.
Embrace.
Yeah.
By the way, what's the difference between life coaching and therapy?
Well, therapy is more of, it focuses on what happened to you, why are you behaving like this, what happened in the past that has made you become like this. So it's more of a healing traumas and what happened to you or what has happened to you. While life coaching focuses on, I am here now. I want to go from here to here. It can be a career. How do I get to, let's say I have a goal, how do I get there? So it focuses, coaching focuses on your patterns, your perspective, and then determining your purpose in life, like finding your purpose and finding your path in life. So life coaching is just to guide someone to progress, while therapy is like treatment for traumas and other things that someone is experiencing in their personal life. Yeah.
And still on that, when one wants to settle on a life coach, you know, I know for therapists, we know where to find therapists. What about life coaches? Are they different people? Of course they are. So where do we get life coaches, and maybe how do you go about getting a life coach? Who should that person be?
Well, life coaches are available. Like I, for one, I've done my life coaching at Destiny Life Coaching, and there are different people. There are people who do financial life coaching. There are people who do career life coaching. There are people who do like parenting life coaching. So there are online social media platforms. I think you can get some coaches there, but it's also important to know what you want to achieve so that you get the right life coach. Yeah.
I want to still stay on the topic of therapy a bit. You know, yes, you've said everyone needs therapy, and that is something that we've heard over and over, that getting therapy is really, it's good for everyone. You know, it's good for your mental wellness and all that. But, well, there's the topic on how expensive it is. You know, so maybe are there therapists who are much cheaper or give free services, maybe for someone who's watching and they feel they want to get into therapy?
Okay. About free service, because remember, these therapists have gone to school, that's their career, probably they're a single parent and they need to take care of their children. So I've had the concern of the cost of therapy, but nowadays we have COVID brought into virtual sessions. People started doing virtual sessions. Virtual sessions tend to be more cheaper than physical sessions. But also I've seen different therapists have different costings. But therapy is more than the cost. It goes beyond the cost. There's personal rapport that you have with a therapist. You have, when you're working with a therapist, there has to be that rapport that you have with the therapist. So in terms of cost, there are different costings by different therapists out there, and if someone is looking for a therapist, I think they can just go and check out the different costings that different therapists have. Plus also, I think there is room for negotiation, I believe. Yeah, because someone is trying to take care of themselves. So for some of them, there is room for negotiations. But also, I encourage people to focus more on the rapport that you do have with your therapist, so that you can benefit from the sessions. It's the most important thing. Are you connecting with this therapist? Are you benefiting from this therapist? And then there is stigma around therapy. A lot of stigma. I'll have to talk about that briefly. People associate therapy with mental issues, like mental, like psychotic. People think when you're seeing a therapist, you're psychotic, but it's basically trying to heal and trying to be a better version of yourself. So for people that think it's for only people that are crazy, give it a shot. it makes you live a better and more fulfilling life. Yeah.
All right, as we almost come to a close of this conversation, we've looked at modern day parenting on the parent side. What role do the children have to play?
Okay. The children, we bring forth the children, and we do create the foundation for them.
Okay.
So when they are younger, there is not so much that they can do, because they are looking up to you as the parent to take care of them, to nurture them, to provide for them. So I think when the children are younger, there is not so much they can do.
Okay.
We as the parents play the biggest role. When we require children to take on certain roles that they are not experienced in, it's too much of a burden for them. So I believe the biggest role is the parent.
side.
Yeah,
Okay.
the parent.
Okay. Thank you so much, Tracy, for joining us on this particular conversation. It was a pleasure having you on board.
Thank you so much for having me. It
You're
was a
welcome.
pleasure.
All right.
Okay.
This is where we end Good Morning Kenya for today. Thank you so much to each and every one of you who has been tuned in. We do this again tomorrow, same time and place, God willing. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.